Let's start first with showing another feature of the baking. I will start new C in case anybody wants to follow with me. I will open the gent low. Okay, so we have this snail, and let's do a really quick bake without explaining anything, just what we did last time. So I will plug the high poly to take from. Okay, I will give it some anti-aliasing to make it a little bit better. It looks a little bit better. And we will bake only the normals, just for this example. Okay, so you can see when I do this bake, you can see that the bake is not very amazing. And if you remember yesterday about the box that Substance create around the model, you can see that maybe the box, it looks like the box was not big enough. So our natural approach is to scale it up a little bit. So let's put it 0.5, not 5, 0.5. And I will just do it for the frontal. It's maybe a little bit too much, but it's just to make the point. So let's bake it again. And you can see, okay, the bake is still not perfect, but it looks it's a little bit better. It's getting the bake a little bit better, but we have something that happens here, and we actually see now kind of a mirror of this snail. So what can we do when we have cases like this? So let's go back to the baking window, and you can see that down here we have match, and it says always, and you have other option by mesh name. So let's put it by mesh name for the moment. And you can see that now I got the same baking properties, but I got rid of this mirroring that the head and the body actually projecting back to the baking. So let's try to understand what is happening here actually, what it means bake by mesh name. So I will open Blender, but you can do it in any software that you feel comfortable. Let's just go to modeling layout. And let's import this low poly, FBX. So, as you remember, this snail is from the last class. So I need to find it in the last class. And this is gent low. So it's teeny tiny. Now you can see, if we look, we have here a list of pieces. See, we have the body, and the head is separate, and the eyes are separate, the other eyes are separate, and so on. All the pieces are separate, and you can see their naming, they have their own distinct name with a suffix of low. Now let's import the high poly, the one that we are baking from. Okay, this is our high poly, and you can see the names are exactly the same. The only thing we have is suffix high and suffix low. Now it's very important to keep the name exactly the same, and to export one file as the low, this group, and then the other file as high, this group. Now what is happening, back to Substance, what is happening when we say bake by mesh name, what Substance is actually doing, it's ignoring the rest of the polygons, the rest of the objects in the scene, and it looks only for object that he has that end with suffix underscore low, and he would look for the same name of object with underscore high. Now, if your suffix is different, you can just change it here. So if you don't like to use the word high for some reason, then you can change it to, I don't know, LOD0 or something like this. But it has to communicate with the scene. So just to show it again, we have the same models. It's almost the same models. You can see that they are really following each other. They have the same amount of object in each group with the same names, and the only difference is the suffix underscore high and underscore low. Okay, so this was a quick ad for last class from yesterday. Now today we will actually look how we are bringing, how we prepare and export and bring scene from Blender or any other 3D software into Substance, and what do we need to pay attention to. So the first thing is just what we just talked about now. If you suspect that things will collide with each other because they are too close, then you should create scene that looks like that. So you have a different object, and each object, you know that it doesn't collide with any other object. So in theory, if we would just want it to have less object, I could combine the eyes with I don't know, the house. I could combine them because they are far enough from each other. But the shell and the body are too close, so we would like to put them as different objects. So this is the first thing we would look at. The second thing, which is also very important, is what material is assigned to what object. Let me just hide the high poly. Okay, let's stay with the low. So we need to know what materials we gave, and it doesn't matter the properties of the materials. What matters is that every object that has its own UV map should have its own material. So in this case we have just one material because all the UVs, and we can look here in the Substance, you can see that all the object is on one UV map. So we don't need more materials, but you can see that the name of my material is following the name that I gave in Blender. So also the name of your texture set you defined in Blender or any other software. Now, if you would like for some reason to have the shell in order to get, let's say, more pixels, so we would like to divide the shell from the body, we could give the body different material. Okay, so we gave now the body different material. And now if we will export it, so if we'll export it FBX, and now we'll tick the selected object. So sometimes it's not, for some reason, not automatic. We'll tick the selected object, and if you have a modifier, then apply modified, and I will just keep it as untitled for the moment. Okay, let me just do it again because I was not on object mode. I'm not sure if it exported properly. Now I'll just switch the model between these two. And you can see some of my UVs disappeared, and I got another texture set layer, and this calls material 001, and for sure this is what the name of this material in Blender. So yeah, so this is important to pay attention to, because now we have two different texture sets. Each one will get its own texture files. Okay, so if it's not necessary, it's better not to do it. And a lot of time people forget the default material inside, and it's making the scene a little bit more cluttery and not so nice. So this is the second thing we would like to pay attention when we prepare a scene to from any program to Substance. Now we'll make everything a little bit more confusing because it was too smooth up till now. And let's go back to Substance, and you can see we have, if we need more UV space for any reason, we are starting to have this thing that we have to create more and more texture sets. And it's kind of making our work a little bit more, a bit longer and a bit more, let's say, complicated. If you want to paint now across two different sets, it's kind of impossible. So you will need to paint here, and sometimes the work looks a bit more natural if you could just move from one surface to another, and it will look more seamless, and so on. So let's see what we can do about that. To put it very, very simply, UV, it's a 2D representation of a 3D object. So simple example, it's a plane, because the plane is actually 2D, so it's very easy to move from 2D to 2D. A bit more complex, but still very easy, it's a box, and we all probably open boxes, or tea, or for packaging. And you can see you can open the box and make it flat. So the flat version of the box, as you can see here, is the UVs. Actually, so I also send you these links. So, for example, this would be our cylinder. So the UV would be something like this. Okay, very, very simple example. And with a box, it will be something like this. Okay. Now, as you can see here, some of the edges are connected, and in general, we will prefer to have as many edges connected as possible. All of those together called island, or maybe it's called a bit different in Blender. Okay. I call them islands, but the point is that these are consistently connected faces on the UVs. Now we could cut it wherever we want, like we saw in examples from the lessons before. Let me just bring one image just to a little bit maybe explain what does it mean 3D object turn into 2D image. So those will be our UVs, or very default UVs. Now the shapes here are quite simple, and shapes are getting very, very complex. For example, the Costan, we'll see later on, is super complex. So that's why we are not going to really UV it, but we will come to this later on. Another simple example is a T-box that turned to be something like this. So this is actually how the T-box is being folded in the factory, or in the print house. So this is basically, when we are saying UVs, this is what we mean. There is much more to talk about it and to talk how to create them. It's changed from one application to another, but just for the concept, this is what we mean when we are saying UVs. We'll go back to our problem. I'm just reminding you quickly the problem. We want to paint from one surface, from one object to another, but in the same time to have them on two different maps, because we want more resolution, or we have specific instructions to do so. So I will first add my sphere. I will make it smooth. And now, the first thing I will do is I will go with before I will do anything, we would like to have 2 UV maps for this sphere because we want to get more resolution. So the way that we would go up until now, because of what we learned so far, is that what we'll make, we'll actually, let me just go to, okay, front view, and I will select all the faces. So the way we'll go by, we'll select all of those faces, and we'll assign them new material. Okay. Then we'll select those faces. We'll create new material, and we'll assign to that. Now we deselect and we'll just test that we actually did what we wanted. Okay, so this is that, and this is that. Okay, so now we have two materials. So we know this half would come on one UV. We can now have this one on one UV map and this one on another UV map. But before we actually can export it, we need to create the UVs. So I need to split this sphere into 2 shells, because at the moment you can see, oh, just a minute, it doesn't select the back. So in the moment you can see it's just one island or a shell. Okay, so let me just select those edges. This is exactly where we cut the sphere into half. And sorry, it's here. And let's mark it as a seam. So when we mark as a seam, usually what it does, it tells Blender that we want to separate these 2 pieces in the UVs. So let's select our UVs. And let's do unwrap. Okay, so now we have those two pieces, their own island, but they are both sharing the same UV space. So let's just I will select one vertex and I will go to link, so I will get everything, and I will just scale it up so it covers everything. Now we shouldn't go out. We should stay always inside of this box, this frame. So again, select, link, just to get everything. Let me just do a little modification. It looks a bit nicer. Okay, now if we would export this object with one material, we will have the UVs kind of overlapping each other, and we'll get very weird bake, because everything will be baked twice, and we'll get some kind of artifact. We will not try it. You just need to trust me on this. What we will do is we will export this sphere, and we see that it works. Okay, so now we have, let's start a new project. Let's bring this sphere. Oops. Okay, so now we got what we expected to get. We have two different materials, and we still cannot work from one across the other. So this is what we knew already by now. Now let's see how we can solve it. Okay, so let's go back to edit mode, and we can see our UVs are kind of overlapping each other. So what we have is something that called UDIM, and it means multiple spaces of UVs. And let's see how we can do it in Blender. So let's have new. Let's make it tiled, and OK. Now we made it tiled, but we have only one square. So we need to click this little icon here, so we get actually our UDIM tiles. UDIM, I call it UDIM, and let's add one. So this is how many we want to add, and then we have the resolution and the name, but let's just keep everything on default. And now we got another UV space. So let's select one of our, actually it's already selected. Let's just move this one here. Now you need to pay good attention that your UVs are not going outside of the boundaries, which is in this case the orange line around. Now let's see, if we select everything, you can see that we have two UV maps, one next to each other. Now we don't need the second material, so we'll just assign to everything the first material, and just make sure again it's everything. Okay, so now let's take this object. Okay, and this one will be UDI. Okay, so let's start a new one. And now we will see we will do one thing different than usual. And we will tick use UV tiles workflow. We'll open a scene that actually have contain this. And oh, okay, I guess troubleshooting again. Okay, so I just warned everybody, and we got example. You can see, if you can see really close, I go abroad a bit. So let me just fix this real quick. I'll just scale it down a little bit, and let's see. Okay, so now we should not have any issues. So I select my object, I tick the UV tile workflow. Okay, now we are getting it, and you can see our UVs now have two UV spaces, and you can see also here it's changed a little bit. Before we have only texture set, now we have texture set, and underneath we have the the different UV spaces. But what we wanted to achieve actually will happen, which now we can paint across both of them, and it's totally seamless. And it's especially good when we do body. So we will put the face on one UV texture map, and we will put the body on the rest, and sometimes the resolution would be different. So we really want to have some kind of a way to be able to work smoothly between the body, the line of the neck, and the rest of the body. Okay, so this is very briefly how to prepare model into Substance. Since we are already here, let's just see how we can work with this, because now it kind of what if we want to have to not influence one UV set with another UV set? So we always want to have the ability to go back. So now we don't have different UV sets to just go and work on them separately. Now what we can do is work in a little bit different way, which is to decide where is it influencing. So let's just have a quick example, since we have nothing baked. Okay, so let's have some material. You can see immediately I'm getting the material on both of them, and it's almost seamless. You can see here the line, because we didn't bake the normals. You can see the line between the two UVs, but it's usually disappear when you do bake, because the normal is compensating on this. Let's see what happened when you put this kind of. So you can see, because the projection here is UV projection, they're both the same, but they don't match. So we can, of course, move it to a sphere, and we get this nice shape. Okay, but you can see it's always affecting both of them. Let's put let's put two materials and see how we can quickly mask these two UV sets. So we have this little new box on our layer, and if we click it twice, you can see we get the name of our UV maps, and we can decide to just give it into one. Now get a little bit this weird view, but this is just because we are still under the option to select, because we clicked twice. So we can just click on the layer and we are out. Probably should do it on the top one. And now you can see we easily put on one UV set, we put one material, and well, we can do the same here. So let's click it twice, and now we will tick it off and back on the layer. And so as you can see, it's quite easy to work like this. It creates much less the need to move between UV sets, and if you have the knowledge to prepare UVs, I would recommend to try and work like this. It gives more options. Now let me just show you another thing related to this, in case you will get across. So let's have a new one, and okay. So what if you got a model that already have this UDIM setup, but you don't want it to work in this way for whatever reason? What you can do is, if you tick the second one, it's going to turn those UDIM into a texture set like we are used to so far. So let's try this one. Let's see how it does it. And you can see now I got texture set. They just got the same name as the UV spaces. Okay, rather than putting the UVs in different places, everything else that we learned so far is staying the same. We just add one more capability to work across different UV maps or UV texture maps or UV spaces. Okay, so now we are getting to the actual scanning, and this is we'll see how it goes, because this is a quite heavy scan. It's more than 4 million trees, if I correctly remember, but it's a normal size. It's even small compared to some other scans. So what I did is I kind of prepared the video of me doing the work, and I hope it will be as good as explaining it. It doesn't have sound, so I will go over. I would go over what I'm doing. Okay, let's start. See how it goes. Okay, so I brought the model. Now we have it. It's high poly, and so the first thing I'm doing is that I'm taking a sculpt tool. And the reason I'm taking a sculpt tool because I would like to decimate this model later on, and all those details, the decimation tool would like to keep them. So if I get rid of all these details, which anyway we'll not have in the end, we'll get all of it from the high poly. So we don't need those details. So it's, from my experience, it's worth taking the time and blur them out. It's just a simple smooth brush, and I'm just smoothing everything so the decimation tool would not take them in consideration and would not like to add some more details there, because we want most of the details to come on the spikes, because the spikes is what we want to keep. So yeah, it takes a little bit of time, and I could give it even more time, but for the sake of the presentation, I think it's quite enough. Okay, so I finished to smooth it, and now I'm just going and putting modifier. And I hope everybody knows how to do it. We can look at this again in the program later on, but I just put decimate. Now decimate it's a calculation for the computer, so it takes time. So I just kind of fast forward it. I don't think we could do it live here in the class. So I put the decimation. Now it comes on 1, which is nothing, and I tried first to decimate it, and you can see that now, if you look up here, you can see that it's more than 4.5 million faces. So you can see I have the original is way higher, but it's still high. It's 230,000 at the moment. It's a bit too high, so I went even fifth of it, and then we got 46,000. Now I decided to stop at 46,000 because it could be something workable. If it's the only thing in the scene, devices today could deal with something like this. And if it's worth for you the details, then you can stop there. You could of course go even lower with the decimation. It's really depend on your preferences, on what devices is it going to. But you could see we significantly lower it with a very basic modifier. Now the reason I chose the decimation modifier and not the remesh, because there is also a remesh option, is that I found out that remesh is trying to make everything uniform. Even places with more detail will get the same amount of edge loops, let's say. This is the first thing, and the second thing, and even maybe more important, is when you do remesh, you lose the UVs. Now I saw that. I'm guessing this model came from Agisoft, so it comes out already with UVs and with the textures. So I rather to stay with this decimate because I know I'm not losing the UVs. If I will do remesh, as far as my experience goes, we lose the UVs, and then we need to UV everything. Which for the moment we are not doing. So this process is just showing how to deal with what I got from the, let's say, from the client in this case. So yeah, so that's why I went on decimation. Now I duplicate this one and I apply the deformer. And the last thing I did is I smoothed it. This is the scene I was working from. So I will just go over it just to show what I did. So this is the first one I got. It's the first thing I did is the smoothing. And you can see this is, I don't have here the original, but I do have here the smoothing. So first thing I did, I smoothed it, and you can see I could smooth some more, but I found out that it gives good result and it's enough. Then I decimated. Okay, so now we have much less. Now, if you want to know your poly count, you can always come to the bottom line and right click and see statistics. And here you can see the trees, which is the most important. Let's say when we measure poly count for games, we measure trees, not faces, because faces can be 2 trees, faces can be sometimes 5 trees. And vertices are sharing, so we are measuring trees. So here I decimated it, so I came to from the smooth one, which was for more than 4.5 million. So then I smoothed it, and then what we have left to do is to go to the UVs. We already got the UVs, so I don't need to go and do it again. So I wanted to keep the UVs. Now I had in front of me 2 options. One is to each UV to select different faces according to my UV maps. Plan B, because this is quite heavy, so I will just show you in a video that I made. So just before I'm starting to show it, I will just say, so I started to say before, I had 2 options, at least that I could think of, or 3 actually. So the first option was to use, I got the model with 2 different materials. Each materials were already corresponding with the UV map. I could just leave it as it is, export it, and then I will get two texture sets with UVs and everything. So this was one option. Now, as you remember from before, we had problem to paint from one to another, and I will show you soon how it looks in Substance. But it was ridiculous. It was 2 sets that didn't work with each other. The second option that I had is to have this UDIM. And then it gives me the option to have it on 2 different UV maps, but still be able to work through everything like it is on the same UV map. The third option that I had was to just lay them out again, so to take all these UVs and just to do some command and just to spread them around on just UV space. Now the reason I didn't do it, it's because like I said, in this way we could use a lot of details, because we have to go with higher maps. Higher maps are not always good, so instead of having like 2 maps of 2K, we'll have to suddenly have maps of 4K, which is not compatible with building for devices like phones. So I assumed that we have to stay with 2 UV maps. So this was my option, and this is what I went with a UDIM. Okay, so you can see that now the UVs are a total mess, just on top of each other. I did what we did before. I created a new one with a tile. Then I add one. Now I went and select, because it's already split to 2 different materials, so it was a bit easy. I just selected one material, and you can see how they are not, if we will need to paint through this, it will be very, very complicated. You see, the UVs are not making much sense. Okay, here I'm just making sure that things are being separate, and then I just gave it the same material to both of them, and it's basically what we did before. It's the same idea. Let's see how things looks in Substance. Yeah, I forgot this one on. Okay, so here it comes with the two texture sets, and I will just show you that, but we already looked at this before, but let's look at it again. Any work to do on this kind of UV setup would be almost impossible. We will need to really, every teeny tiny lines would need to continue exactly from the same place, and we will have kind of now you can see, we also can really see where the UVs end, and this is just because it's not baked, so this should not worry you too much. Okay, so it's quite clear this way is not a very great way to work on it. But let's go and open the proper one, and let me we'll just replace it. Hopefully it will work smooth. Okay, then we have the option to have packed. So it's actually, we have one material, but then you can see that some of our pieces are so small that there will be maybe 2 pixels. So this is also not good for us, but it's a good option if you need it. So let's go with actually what we need. And in this case, we will start the scene again because we changed the system. So now we will bring okay. Okay, so now you can see we have it on 2 different UV sets, and we can paint as we wish. So it's totally seamless. Okay. When we will bake it, it will look even better. I will just, I don't know if you, I think I did, yeah. So let me just, because it took quite a lot of time to bake it, so let me just, you have this also, everything we are discussing today you have on the drive, so you can check. Okay, so this is already baked. I just went and baked it. It took quite a long time. But you can see now when it's baked, it's two UV sets. But you see the baking kind of compensate all the UV connection that we had. And the bake looks quite good. I think I don't see if we lost anything. So now we have, let's say, ready object to work on, and we can put we have totally freedom to put whatever material we want. Now you will have problems with the UVs when it comes to things that are not that are UV projection. So if you have some funky UVs like this, you would probably most of the time have to work with triplanar or not even this. Okay, we will come to this next time, how we can work with that. But for the moment, I think we kind of covered this. We went through bake by name, which we decide what kind of object will participate in the baking. This is how we started. Then we talked about UV sets and how we make UV sets from Blender by just assigning materials and naming them. Then we talked about UDIM, which is multiple UV sets. but actually on one texture set list. So let me show a little movie how to optimize high definition scan and to UV it. And this is where we are now. I think it's a good time to stop. I would just like to add before that you could do all of those things directly from Agisoft. As far as I remember, you could actually export the high poly and then export again, create a lower res mesh already in Agisoft, and then export this as low poly. You can also do UVs in Agisoft, which obviously I got, but you can also have this UDIM directly from Agisoft. From my experience, it's more depend on, I mean, texture maps are more influencing performance than poly count. So we had scenes with million polys, million triangles, and it was, it was going, and it was, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. Now when you have a lot of texture maps and you want them in a good quality, then this is where it starts to be very, very heavy on devices. So there is no clear answer. Some people would tell you not more than 10,000. I would tell you it depends how much you want things to look good and what more do you have in the scene. So if you don't have many texture files and this is the only thing you want to show, this is the only thing that will be in the scene, then you can go out. Like in this case, I would go 46,000. Seems to me that doesn't lose much, and it will still look good. So yeah, but it's good to pay attention to it.